and then we can snipe some views from a safe spot where she doesn't feel like we are too close to this tiny young cub. So this may not work, but let's give you an idea of where she is quickly. She's basically hiding out in the shadows underneath a fallen down tree over there, and she's somewhere lying in that long grass. And as soon as I saw her getting a little bit annoyed with us, I thought, rather than waiting a split second longer, let's give her a bit more space, and that way let her relax with our presence. So, like I've said, this is a female leopard with a tiny 5 to 6 week old little cub, and I'm guessing the cub is with her, lying somewhere in the shade and the shadows over there. So let me reverse a little bit more. We are going to have to just take our time and quite delicately go about this situation, rather than putting any unnecessary pressure on her. I think we're going to get a better angle from here. Senzo seems to think he's got a glimpse of her. Where are you hiding, Thandi? Go forward a tiny bit. If I go forward a tiny bit... Oh, I can see some movement. I think that's the tiny cub I saw move. Hey? Stop there. I think I saw the tiny little cub moving. It's hard to be certain. But we are just going to wait patiently in this area at a distance where Thandi is relaxed with our presence. I know you can't see anything right now, but we are just going to have to be very, very patient and as sensitive as possible, because we don't want to give this leopardess and her cub a hard time. But I think where we are here, we are in a good spot to just sit and wait patiently. I'm so happy we found the spot where I'm guessing the den is. I'm guessing there's a little bit of a cave underneath this fallen down tree. Not hugely different to the previous den site before she moved here. It was also in the banks of a riverbed, and it was just a kind of a natural cavity. Phew. Well done, Senzo. Senzo actually spotted her initially. And what's interesting with leopard is it's only once you've spotted them that they'll become frustrated if you are too close. And the reason for that is that they know full well as and when they have been spotted, and if they are trying to hide from you, they obviously don't necessarily like the fact that they may have been found. What to do? Hello, Cheetah Riker. You would like to know if this leopardess would attack us if we got too close. And yes, there is most certainly a likelihood that she would attack us. In a vehicle, I think less so than on foot, but if we were moving through this area on foot, I think there is a definite chance that she could decide it was worth her while to launch a full-blown attack. Even though the chances are small, and I'm guessing she'd probably just growl and charge out at us and not commit to a full charge, there is a chance of that happening, and there's also nothing stopping her jumping into this vehicle and tearing us to pieces. Even though the odds are slim, if you are to push an animal enough, they will do things that even they probably wouldn't presume that they would do. And it's no different to humans, you know. I guess a lot of us, if pushed into a scenario, and if people don't listen to our warnings and our advice that we are trying to give them, then even we could snap and do the unthinkable. So I think we are definitely safe where we are now. We were parked very, very close to that shady patch. I'm guessing we were probably 4 meters away from her when Senzo initially spotted her, and it was at that point that I thought, let's just move a little bit further away. She's going to feel more comfortable, and more importantly, well, not more importantly, but equally importantly, we don't want to give her little cub any negative thoughts regarding us and these vehicles. And it's critically important that we are as sensitive as possible, because if we are sensitive and we do assist in raising this little cub to a degree that it is completely relaxed with the vehicles, then that means we are going to have wonderful, wonderful viewings of it as it develops and grows without any concern for us. So tricky to know what to do now. I guess I can try and reposition again ever so slightly. What I'm going to do is just use my binoculars for a little bit, and hello Debbie, you've mentioned that you would rather never see Thandi than scare her with her new cub, and yes, I mean, trust me, it's in none of our plans, it's all of our last intentions to scare her and or her cub. But there is a very fine line and balance between being too sensitive and not viewing these animals and actually viewing them. Bless you, Senzo. Senzo's holding in some sneezes. And we do need to remember that it is important that these animals do get habituated, because if none of the leopard in the Sabi Sands were habituated, which does take human influence, then we wouldn't have been so lucky as to get all the incredible sightings that we are seeing. And importantly, the Sabi Sands wouldn't be a world-renowned leopard viewing destination, which helps to definitely keep it well looked after and protected. There we go. Well done, Senz. Now, Senzo's got an ear in focus. So I think, and I also just got a glimpse of her. I think I can reposition the vehicle ever so slightly to get, oh no. Okay, yeah, okay, so I just need to move forward a tiny bit for Senz, because there's a few branches in the way. Just stay on her there, Senz. We're going to break the rules here. We're going to stay zoomed in while moving, and that way we'll just know exactly when we are in the best possible spot. I think that's, let me just reverse a tiny bit. There's the cub. There you can see the tiny little cub in the background. Cute, there it is. Well done, Senzo. And it looks like it's coming to Mom. It was just a glimpse, but you could definitely see it there. And what an awesome, awesome scene this is. Even though it's just the slightest of glimpses we are getting, it is our second time that we are lucky enough to view this tiny little fur ball. Woohoo! And I'm very, oops, sorry Senzo, I just took my foot off the brake and we went sliding out of position, but I think we are actually in a better spot now. Now we can see Thandi. You were perfectly on her. If you just, oh, that, well done, Senz. Now, it's tricky for us to see exactly what's going on. I've got a dusty monitor. At least it's bigger than Senzo. Senzo's got a tiny one that he's looking at, so it can be difficult for us to see as well as you guys are seeing. Looks like the cub's coming towards us. And thank you, everyone, to all your wonderfully kind words congratulating Senzo and I on getting you a glimpse of this young cub. There's Mama. Hello, proud cat Mama. You'd like to know if, as and when Thandi moves this cub from place to place and den to den, will she carry her in her mouth? And yes, I think for the majority of the time, that is exactly what will happen, because the cub is still tiny. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure the cub's not actually creeping up on us. I saw a tiny bit of movement in the grass, and I thought maybe this curious little kitten has come to say hello. But I think I'm wrong. So yes, I think definitely at this age, up to about 3 months or 2 months, 2 to 3 months of age, leopards will carry their cubs in their mouth, but not necessarily all the time. And it also depends on how many cubs she may have, because if she did have multiple cubs, then of course she can only carry one at a time, and sometimes they will decide to move all the cubs together in one movement, which means she can take turns carrying the one cub, but one of the cubs, but the other two will have to trundle alongside. Epic stuff. Now we aren't gonna move. Oh, there we go. Well done, Sens. We just got another little tiny glimpse of that cub. Looked like it may have fallen off its mom. Seems like it's playtime for the cub. And I'm just so happy that we've been lucky enough to be able to get a view of Mom and the cub from a safe distance where they both feel relaxed with our presence. She would very clearly let us know if she was not happy with where we were, and she would do that by snarling at us. If we didn't listen to her snarls, then maybe she would even charge out at us, growling and hissing. So we are definitely in a good spot here. We're having absolutely no negative impacts on the situation. So that is the great news. And we certainly aren't going to be going anywhere for the rest of this safari, but you guys will be. You're going to be heading back up to the Masai Mara with Ralph. I'm not too... We still are at the den site. We have had no luck getting any further decent visuals. All we can see is a kind of blur of spots and the odd tail flicking in that thick vegetation. But the situation is too good for us to abandon. We would be foolish to leave this area now for two reasons. By us being here, we are slowly habituating this young cub to the sounds of the vehicles. Okay. Well done, Sans has spotted them. Okay. So, okay, I just want to wait a bit, Sans. It is very exciting, but I don't want to put any unnecessary pressure on them. So rather than moving the vehicle, I'm going to stay put for the time being. Sans did get a glimpse of her moving off from the right to the left. Oh, was it the cub in there? Okay. So it seems like the cub is moving around, exploring its new little den sites, while Mom rests in the shade. And that's the perfect scenario. And like I was saying before, all that excitement, by us being here, we are going to be slowly educating this cub that we are not bad people, and the sound of the vehicle moving as well as our voices is very, very important for it to get used to, so that when it grows up, it's relaxed with our presence, which means we can continue to view them. Okay, it looks like Mom's on the move. Oh, now you can see she is snarling and hissing at us a little bit, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just listen to her and just move the vehicle back a little bit. As tempting as it is to stay and get you more views of her, I'd rather listen to her warnings and get us a little bit further away, and we still will be able to get some views from further back. So that is what I'm going to do as quietly as possible. Not doing a very good job at it, but we will get there eventually, and we can snipe some views from even further away. Oof, this is going to be very tricky. But from here, a further distance, I'm confident that she is going to relax a little bit more. So let's take a look and see if we can get any glimpses of her now. Now, a little bit frustrating that as soon as we got some good views, we had to reposition the vehicle, but it is imperative that we are sensitive. As exciting as it is to try and show you this little cub, what's more important is that we keep a good relationship between her mother and us. Phew. Doesn't look like we are going to get a view from here. So, oh, there we go. Did I see her, or was that grass? It's so difficult to be certain. There's hundreds of tiny little grass seeds that look like they could be a leopard when they blow in the wind, but I think that is exactly what got me mistaken there. Whew. Okie dokie. What we can possibly do is try and loop around onto another side where we can get another angle, also from a healthy distance, where I'm confident she is going to be unperturbed by our presence and movement. So we're going to get into that spot, and while we do that, we're going to send you back to Tristan, who is just perusing. Well, I'm so happy that you got to see some Dic, certainly some of my favorite antelope. Now, we have managed to get into what we think is a decent spot for now. We can see Mom, Thandi. You can just see a bit of her shoulder moving as she grooms herself. And I'm hoping that the cub is going to pop in to say hello to her, and then we should hopefully be able to get you a few more glimpses of it. Now, her head was perfectly in frame. It's kind of behind a few bushes at the moment. Senzo is doing a great job on camera. It's incredibly tricky business filming in these conditions. But we can see a little bit of the spotted coat glistening in the dappled sunlight there. And with a little bit of luck and a bit more patience, I'm hoping we are going to get spoilt with another view. But for now, as I said a little bit earlier, it's important that we just sit here. Our presence and our voices and the sounds of the vehicle are very, very important noises and sounds and smells for this young leopard to get used to. Hello, Lady Starfire. You ask an interesting question. You would like to know whether my thoughts on habituation, or what my thoughts on habituation of these leopards is, especially with regards to an animal that may become very habituated to our presence, and then they may leave the safety of the reserve and therefore be habituated to people outside of the reserve. You know, there is, I think, a small risk of that happening. And it has happened with a few leopard within the Sabi Sands, especially when they get old and possibly injured. What you tend to find is that they get forced out of their territory and then sometimes exit the reserve. Usually by that stage of the game, though, the individuals are in a... Oh, there we go. We can see her a little bit better now. Are not in a good shape and are at the end of their career anyway. And they usually actually do get exterminated. So I personally... Even though there is a slight risk of the very thing you said happening, I think it's more important for wild animals to be habituated so that people can view them, because there's no national parks in the world that are run like a charity. All national parks and reserves that look after animals and provide sanctuaries for animals need to create revenue. And in order to create revenue, you need to be able to see the animals within any wilderness. So I think we cannot avoid the need for habituation of wild animals. It's a necessity for us to be able to show people them, and by being able to show people them and enjoy their safaris, that is what causes people to continue coming back on safari. If we were to just close all the reserves and let the animals do their own thing, And if no money was required, well, I guess that would be first prize. The animals would be able to go about their business without ever having to see a human. But that's not realistic. So I don't think habituation is negative, even though you may get a few very random scenarios where habituated animal may cause trouble with people. I think it is few and far between that is actually going to be the case. And I believe very strongly in that in this world that we live in, wild animals, they don't have a price to pay, but they've got to kind of earn their keep. And by earning their keep, they simply have to allow us to look at them. That is all we want and need. And for those who really don't want to be found and seen by us, they do have that option. But as long as the majority of the animals in these areas are habituated, then the majority of tourists that come through are going to have a good time and continue to therefore provide the funding to safeguard these incredible places. Are you still cleaning yourself, Thandi, or are you cleaning that little cub? Hard to be certain. She is moving about though. Maybe she's thinking about going and looking for another meal. It's hard to know how much of her kill she managed to feed on before the hyenas came onto the scene. But she will possibly be thinking of going and looking for another meal, or possibly even heading back to that kill. She may have left the kill before the hyenas came onto the scene. It's impossible for us to know at this stage. Hello, young Lisa. You would like to know how much would a tiny baby leopard cub weigh when it is just born? And I am guessing it would weigh about 500 grams. No more than that. So definitely not a very big animal. They'd probably be able to fit in your two cupped hands, little Lisa. And they grow very quickly, but they would have been tiny, blind and helpless little furballs for their first 10 days. Great stuff. We are going to send you off to another predator, although it's not a cat, it's one that likes to slither through the water. Well, it sounded like you guys had a wonderful birding session there with Ralph. And we've got a good view of Thandi now. You can just see her head. She's facing away from us, and it looks like she's taking a much-needed snooze. I'm sure all you mothers out there will agree that it's not an easy business raising a child, especially within its first few weeks and months. And that is exactly the predicament she's in. Thankfully, though, she has been well fed over the last 3 days. She made a impala kill that's been keeping her well sustained, and it'll be interesting to see when she heads off in search of her next meal. I'm guessing it's going to be this evening that she starts looking for her next snack, and it's imperative that she does make a kill as soon as possible so that she can create as much milk as possible for this cub and its growing appetite. Christina, you'd like to know, how does the cub know to stay put when the mother heads off from the den? And I'm not entirely sure exactly how it works, but in my opinion, what happens is that just like humans, you start to have commands and sayings to do things or to not do things, and I'm sure this leopardess will reprimand that young cub and tell it when it's being well behaved and when it's not. And I guess a lot of it will also be instinctual. As soon as mom heads off, the cubs that are well suited to survive will be the ones that do lie still, tucked away, that don't do too much exploring. Those that do, well, those ones won't make it, and slowly those genes will be weeded out of the ecosystem. So hard to be certain exactly what goes on. To be honest, I haven't had the joy of spending too much time at leopard den sites, other than when I was a very young guide, and therefore there was so much that I was taking in that I possibly wasn't taking in the finer details as to how long exactly will leopardess spend at the den, how many times do they need to nurse the cubs at this age. So I'm by no means expert when it comes to young little leopard cubs, as well as how their mothers behave around them. And I guess it's fair to say that not many people have had great insight into the first few weeks and months of young leopards and their mothers' lives, because ordinarily they are tucked away, hidden away from us. And it obviously makes it therefore difficult to gain a lot of insight into. Hello, Nick, you're interested also on the topic of den sites and how often leopards will move them. Well, in the case of this female, we can confirm that she's moved at least 3 times within a roughly 6-week period. She may have moved more. She may have stopped off at other den sites between the ones that we found her at, but definitely 3. And each leopard will differ in terms of how many den sites it uses, depending on a multiple of variables. Traffic of hyena and other male leopards in and around a given den site. The actual den site itself may be very, very safe within a rocky outcrop, for example, with lots of small crevices for the cub to hide, or it may be a less substantial den site where a mother's not going to feel as relaxed to stay for a long period of time. So it's going to vary, but I think it's fair to say, especially when they're very young like this, that a leopard will probably move every 2 to 3 weeks. And the reason why they will move den sites, even if they are confident that they found a really good one, is because of their scent trail. A leopardess coming backwards and forwards into the same spot will possibly lure in hyenas. Now, hyenas do have the ability to follow the scent of a leopard. So if they find a lot of leopard scent in one area, they may start fishing around there in the hope that they may find a kill and or a den site. And it is important to remember that hyenas and other male leopards that did not father leopard cubs will kill them when they find them. So those are probably the 2 main killers of leopard cubs in the Sabi Sands, as well as lion, of course. There's a strong likelihood that this individual leopard had some more cubs, not just the one, and who knows what would have got a hold of those. There have even been situations when leopards actually get eaten by young pythons. So, not young pythons, big pythons rather. Young leopards, big pythons, but not even a big leopard, a big python will be able to consume a young leopard cub. Ryan, you'd like to know if it's normal for leopards to give birth to just 1 cub, and I would say no. I would say it's abnormal. I would say what's more normal is that they give birth to 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 cubs, and then, due to the nature of the business, a lot of those tiny little furballs will not make it. When they are first born, they are blind and helpless and can be predated on by just about anything. Snakes included, as I've just mentioned. So I'm guessing that the other cubs that were born to this litter have already been snaffled by something, who knows what. It would be very, very interesting if we could follow the leopard's every movements, but it's impossible for us to. There's a lot of hours of the day where we are not out and about, and therefore they will do things and things will happen that we have absolutely no idea of how exactly they happened or what went down. Very good. We're going to spend the last few minutes here in the hope that this cub is going to poke its cute little face out for us. And while we do that, we will send you back to Tristan.